Hi, Miss Eichmann here, heading into some small spaces. We are on chapter 22. There's only about 3 chapters left. We were just about done with our book, so I will get right into it. Ollie walked through the corn for hours. There were a lot of scarecrows, and more seemed to appear as she went on. Though she never saw their heads move, they always watched her come, and they always watched her go. Sometimes she would call for Brian or Coco. No one answered. Ollie stopped once to drink from her water bottle. It was half empty. She got cold, kept moving, wishing for pizza. It was definitely afternoon, but no countdown had appeared on her watch. Just the directions leading her into the maze. In and steadily in. The sun had begun to fall toward the horizon in a low autumn arc when she heard a new sound in the corn, like something big was moving through it. Then a long, slow breath. Ollie froze. It sounded like a huge dog breathing. Definitely not the sound of a scarecrow. The steps were getting closer. Ollie crept between 2 stalks of corn and hid. A creature came snuffling down the long line of the maze. Ollie didn't realize she was biting her lip until she tasted blood. It was a dog. Sort of. It had a coat the color of mushrooms, a snout like a hound, paws like a cat, and eyes of a perfect egg white. Its sides went in and out, and its breathing was louder than the corn stalks. It made Ollie think of a minotaur in the labyrinth. The beast came closer, growling low in its chest. It paused, sniffed the air, sniffed again. Its ears swiveled towards Ollie. And then it peered between the corn stalks and saw her. She stared into its eyes, white as 2 cooked eggs, and she could barely breathe. The beast didn't move, but it growled again. "Come out, little girl, come out." Talking, like a person. The edge of a fang just showed beneath its lip. Ollie tried to think. Those eyes, that voice, were they familiar? She'd seen egg white eyes before, seen them pressed up against a bus window, watching her, just like they were doing now. "At night they'll come for the rest of you." She swallowed, and then she spoke, squeaking. Are you the bus driver?" The beast didn't answer directly, but its mouth dropped open, panting. She saw the red tongue, the red lips. "Come out," the beast whispered again, and this time reached out a stealthy, clawed foot. Ollie jumped back, and then a surge of fear and desperation wrenched around and dug into her backpack. She scrambled in her lunchbox and, on a burst of courage, thrust her way out of the corn, held out 2 of her dad's peanut butter cookies, and said, "Don't you dare touch me. I gave you food once before. Do you want some more?" She hoped she was right. She prayed she was right. Her hand holding the cookie shook. The beast had stepped back, and it shut its mouth and eyed her. Its tongue flicked out as though tasting the air. He licked his chops. His tongue darted towards the cookies. Ollie stepped back. "No," she said. "You have to trade me for it. Remember?" Silence. Then a hoarse, deep voice crept out between the beast's teeth. "What trade, little girl?" If her classmates were scarecrows, Ollie thought a little hysterically, then it wasn't too strange that their bus driver was a giant wolf creature. Ollie said, "Where are my friends?" "Lost," said the wolf. "Lost until dark. And then scarecrows." Ollie broke off a piece of cookie and fed it to him. He licked it up with surprising delicacy. "Do you know where they are?" "Yes." She fed him another piece, thinking. Her watch would get her to the center of the maze, but Brian and Coco? Ollie closed her fist on the remains of her cookies. She said, "I'll give you the rest. I'll give you all the food I have if you go find my 2 friends, Brian and Coco, and bring them to the center of the maze before dark. If," Ollie added hastily, "you don't hurt them on the way." "I won't help," breathed the creature, "even if you'll get to the center. What he has, he holds." "We'll see," said Ollie, and held out her cookies. The creature snapped them up, then practically inhaled the rest of her food. Ollie, a little forlornly, put her empty lunchbox back in her backpack, hoping she'd done the right thing. The beast licked his chops. "He doesn't feed me good things," he said. "Only souls sometimes. The used up ones, dry as dead corn." Without another word, the creature turned and stalked away. It was almost dark when the corn finally ended. Ollie found herself at the edge of an open space, the middle of the maze. The open space was full of scarecrows. They stood in a ragged ring, arms stretched out. Their big garden tool hands seemed to reach for her. Many of them she recognized, her classmates, horribly changed. She saw the two tall scarecrows in black suits from those moments in Kathy's house. Caleb and Jonathan. Perhaps she was imagining it, but there almost seemed to be a look of pleading on their faces, on all those blank, sewn-on faces. In the very center of the maze was a platform, like a farmer might use to keep an eye on the corn. Ollie couldn't see the top of it. A ladder led up to a hole in the center. The scarecrows glared, sightless, yet somehow seeing. Ollie thought she saw two women, the ghost of Beth and Kathy, hiding among the scarecrows watching. "A living girl," the whisper seemed to rise from the corn itself. "A living girl. Here." Ollie took a deep breath and walked past the scarecrows. She walked all the way to the ladder that led to the center of the tall platform. She began to climb. Halfway up, Ollie looked back. All the scarecrows were watching her. Ollie's fingers tightened convulsively on the ladder rungs. Then she called down, "I'm going to go home, and I'm going to save you all." Then she climbed up to the top. Ollie didn't know what sort of thing she was expecting on a platform in the middle of a haunted corn maze. Horrors for sure, though she was almost too exhausted to be frightened. It was going to be dark very soon. An ugly reddish light bathed the scene. "My," said a gentle voice, "all this way, right to the center, and before dark. I'm impressed." Ollie peered into the shadows gathering on the platform and could hardly believe her eyes. "You?" she gasped. "Who did you expect?" asked Seth. His pale hair caught the last of the light. His eyes were as deep and his smile was as lovely as they had been at Misty Valley Farm. Behemoth the cat sat at his side, watching lamp-eyed in the almost dark. "You're the smiling man?" said Ollie slowly. She could barely believe it. "I thought—" She'd imagined a skull smile, a pumpkin head smile, a scarecrow smile. She'd not imagined a kind smile, the sort that would make a scared kid not be scared anymore. "I am," said Seth. He was wearing his jeans, his flannel shirt, just like he was about to go milk cows, but there were no cows. Instead, he was sitting on a platform at dusk with 100 scarecrows at his feet. The cat twined around him, never taking its eyes off Ollie. "You're a cat," she whispered. Seth smiled. "My servant. Cats are convenient. They go between worlds, their nature unchanged. The only creature that can. How do you think I kept track of you?" Ollie remembered Coco thinking she'd seen an animal, remembered Brian wondering if he'd imagined a creature's footsteps. "The bus driver?" she asked, voice flat to stop it from shaking. His ordinary smiling face frightened her more than any number of ghosts. "My hound," said Seth and shrugged dismissively. "I sent him to bring you to me. Folk can wander this maze until they die. It is bigger than it seems. Rather surprising you avoided him and came to the center on your own. Shame about your poor friends. You made that deal with Jonathan 100 years ago. More." "I did," said Seth. "Why?" "Why not?" "Why scarecrows then?" He shrugged. "No one notices them in the sunlight world. They have hands, they are useful. They can be my eyes and my ears, and since they are neither flesh nor spirit, they can be my doorway." He grinned. "Also, they are frightening, and I do love that." "Miss Webster knew who you were," Ollie pursued doggedly, trying not to hear the sound of the scarecrows moving. She was scared of you." "Scared of me?" said Seth. He laughed, not kindly. She was more afraid of the future. Her farm was about to go under. She was going to prison for fraud. All her pretty dreams sold in bankruptcy court, and all her sunlit life in nature cut short by bars. I'll do anything, she said. I told her what she had to do if I was to save her farm for her, save her freedom for her. How she wept when I told her, but she paid the price. Mostly, she neglected to get rid of the book. We were the price, said Ollie. The 6th grade. The day was nearly done. Of course, although I did wonder if there would be someone clever enough to avoid the scarecrows. I even had my hound warn you. I wanted to know if there were any clever children. I thought you might be the one. He bowed, and the movement looked old-fashioned but strangely natural despite his flannel shirt and jeans. Although, little thief, I suppose Beth's book helped. His face showed a flash of malice. He really wanted that book destroyed, Ollie thought. I don't want congratulations, Ollie snapped. I just want to go home. Of course, said Seth, surprising her. You have made it to the center of the maze. Don't you want your reward? Sure, said Ollie. Send us home, all of us. Seth smiled at her, a charming boyish smile. Then his grin stretched and stretched again, wide as the cat in Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. So wide it literally stretched from ear to ear, like dead Beth Webster. Ollie screamed at him, screamed with a mix of terror and rage. Don't you dare try to scare me. Don't you dare. Seth stepped back, laughing. Lighten up. Why not when it's fun? I've been scaring you for days. I'm not tired of it yet, he sombered. See, girl, you say you want to go home. I know you do. But it's not the thing you want most in all the world. I know that. Tell me, what do you want most, Olivia Adler? I'm not in the business of granting second-rate wishes. Before Ollie could answer, 2 things happened. Ollie's watch chimed. It was night. And from below the platform came the sound of 2 people shouting. Ollie's breath seemed to fail in her throat. She looked over the platform edge just in time to see the huge dog that had been the bus driver herd Brian and Coco into the center of the maze, snapping and growling. The scarecrows clicked their garden tool hands together like they were applauding, and then they seized Brian and Coco and held them tight. Let them go, Ollie cried. How dumb was she, trusting the beast who'd been a bus driver just because he liked her dad's cooking? Seth smiled at her sweetly this time, not with a skull grin like before. Gladly, he said. But is that really what you want most, clever girl? Decisions, Miss Adler. Do you want to go home safely with your little friends? Or do you want... He trailed off, head cocked as though listening. Ollie began, but then words failed her. A voice called from the corn, a voice she had known she would never hear in her whole life again. Olivia, it called. Olivia, where are you? Ollie froze. Brian and Coco were thrashing in the scarecrow's grip, but Ollie stopped seeing them. She couldn't see anything at all. She could only listen for all she was worth. Mom, she cried. She spun toward the edge of the platform. Not so fast, came Seth's voice, sharp now from behind her. Ollie whipped back towards him, panting. You've seen I have the goods. Now let's bargain, Olivia Adler. What will you give to have your mother back? Below her, both Brian and Coco were shouting her name, but she ignored them, straining to hear the other beloved voice. Sweetheart, please, it's so dark. Her mother, right there. For a moment, Ollie forgot Brian and Coco, even forgot her father waiting for her somewhere beyond this nightmare. She just wanted her mom. The smiling man brought Caleb back. Seth brought Caleb back. He could do it. What do you want? She asked. For you, brave girl, Seth said gently. Not much at all. I'll let you go, you and your mother. You can even take your 2 friends with you. 4 lives, not bad, But you can't have the rest. Mustn't be greedy. Leave the rest, and you drop the book in the river. I'm tired of Beth Webster's ghost. And one day, a long time from now, when I knock on your door, you have to let me in. That's what I call a good deal." His eyes were earnest and kind. Wild thoughts whirled through Ollie's brain. Brian, Coco, they could all escape together. She would come back from this nightmarish place holding her mother's hand. Beth Webster's book lay heavy in her pocket. She thought of Caleb and Jonathan. A drowned man breathed back to life would look like him. Ollie swallowed hard. Then she turned back to the smiling man. "Okay," she said, shaking. "Fine. Say I say yes. How did the four of us get home?" He smiled. "The maze is at the door. One of the exits will take you back to your world, but only I know which. Make a deal and I'll show you the way. Is it a deal, Olivia Adler?" He put out his hand. "Olivia! Olivia!" called her mother's voice. Ollie didn't take the hand. "I don't want Brian and Coco," she said. "They're annoying. I want Jenna and Lily. But they're scarecrows. How do I take them with me? You promised me 4 lives. Seth shrugged again. "Mist for capturing, water for freeing. Leith Creek runs through my world and yours. Let the scarecrows touch the water, and they'll be as they were. Now shake." "Until the mist becomes rain," Ollie thought. She was gripping the watch on her wrist, white-knuckled. Tears still ran freely down her face, but she managed to smile. "No thanks," she said. Seth stilled. The whole field seemed to hold its breath. "But now I know how to get out of here," Ollie added. "So thanks for that." The cat yowled. "Olivia!" screamed her mother's voice, loving, desperate. It sounded like she was directly below her. Ollie was clasping on her watch on her wrist so hard the metal bit into her palm. "That's not my mother," Ollie said to Seth. She held up her wrist with the watch. "My mother is already with me, helping. Maybe she's a little easier to hear in this weird ghost world of yours, but I'm pretty sure she never left me. Not at all. Just like Kathy Webster never left her kids. So you are a liar and a fraud, and we are going home." She was sobbing as she spoke. "Olivia!" cried her mother's voice one more, faint now. "Well," said Seth, "that's a shame, because of course if you don't make a deal to get out, you aren't getting out at all. You're already part of a bargain, you know. If you won't make a new one, well, then you'll be my servant too." Below, Ollie could hear creaking as the first of the scarecrows began coming up the ladder. "You will stand in the rain by day and walk my world at night. Keep the maze open and do my bidding." "No," said Ollie, "absolutely not." "Until the mist becomes rain." Well, Ollie wasn't about to conjure rain from the sky, so she did the only thing she could think of, which was pull her water bottle from its side pouch and fling a scattering of drops at the first scarecrow coming up the ladder. The scarecrow screamed a human scream. The cat hissed and jumped at Ollie, clawing at her face. Ollie threw it off, and then Seth was there, tall and terrible, his mouth a great starving maw, but he still wasn't attacking her. Ollie realized, just trying to scare her. In a voice still thick with tears, Ollie said, "I haven't made a bargain with you. If you made a deal with Miss Webster, then it was a cheat, a fraud. She gave what she couldn't give, us, and I'm taking us back." Seth's mouth closed, and Ollie knew she was right. He was a cold, tricky thing, but there were rules, and he'd broken one. Taken what someone didn't have the right to give. "I can only give you power over me," said Ollie, more and more sure. "You can't take it. You said you'd give me water. Well, I have that too." Seth looked less human now. His grin still took up half his face, but his eyes above were malevolent. "Little fool," he said. "I'm older than you. I'm stronger than you." "So?" said Ollie. "If you could have made me a scarecrow, you would have done it by now. But we hid in small spaces at night, and the scarecrows couldn't get to us. And now I'm making no bargain with you, not even for the deepest wish of my heart, so you can't do anything to me." She splashed water on the next climbing scarecrow. Another human scream. "They are the door," said Seth, speaking fast. He definitely looked afraid now. "What will you do when they are all humans? The door will close." But Ollie smiled right back at Seth. Do you know what else I'm pretty sure exists in both worlds? A book called Small Spaces, 'cause it was bound and printed in Boston, and it would be really weird if they'd only printed one copy. I have my copy right here. I guess you forgot about that sort of thing when you're super old corn maze monster. They stared each other down. Seth spoke first. Will you bet your life on it? He whispered. Ollie's mouth was bone dry. Yes, she said. Seth bowed suddenly. Check and mate to you, he said. Clever girl. Ollie, weary, said nothing. In Seth's eyes was almost a look of wonder. I will be back, he said. He didn't say it like a promise, but a fact. Nevertheless, I thank you. I do not lose very often, he added, with a quirk of his mouth. There is something you will want of me one day. There will be things I want, said Olivia Adler, but never of you. Call my hound by his name, said Seth, and he will come. And then the smiling man smiled at her one more time and bowed again courtly and disappeared.